is Daily Blast Live. We're talking about what you're talking about.
You all ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
Dun, 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 dun.
This is a sham.
No.
Y'all, just stop.
Get real.
Welcome to DBL. Lindsay, Al, it's Friday.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Right over me?
No, you're part of the three.
But that's a lot of responsibility to not tell me before.
We were making a heart shape over your head.
No, that's not a high five then. That's just a weird YMCA symbol. Yeah.
You ruined it. All right, you guys are already writing in like crazy. I don't think I've ever seen the chat so lit up on YouTube. After following this story 4 years, we have finally learned Jussie Smollett's fate. Jussie was sentenced to 150 days in jail. That's about 5 months. And another 25 months of probation. He also has to pay $120,000 in restitution and a $25,000 fine. Now, Jussie still maintains his innocence on the 2019 hate crime hoax. We're also getting a look at his new mugshot, and he is showing no emotion. All right, let's think about immediately. Everyone here is writing in, I think the sentencing is too much. I like the sentencing. Lindsay, first thought on 5 months in jail.
Just at this point, you did the crime, do the time. He also is playing in the circus, these stupid games. Don't be mad when you're looking like the clown. I'm sorry, all these analogies, I'm done with it. I'm done with it because he did all this stuff and he still will not stop doubling down. You said in the courtroom, he's maintaining his innocence. Nobody commits this hard. It's like a method actor at this point. He's committing so hard. It's embarrassing. It's so embarrassing.
Do you think the sentencing was cool though? If you didn't know if you just read this and you didn't really even know who he was, would you look and say, 5 months is about right?
I told you how I felt about Chicago PD specifically, and Chicago as a whole coming at him so hard because they had a vendetta. So it felt very personal. I think if it was anybody else that wasn't Jussie Smollett, then possibly it would have been less than this. I don't know if they would have went to the extent that he went and had the public eye the same way that he did. But because he did what he did, this is what they gave him. And I think honestly, this is a slap on the wrist. Could have been much worse.
It could have been.
Could have been 15 years. So be happy.
You think 5 months in jail?
No, I think that he should have got probation. I think Chicago's going way too hard. But here's where we are, and here's the situation you put yourself in. So now you're the clown that has to go to jail. That's terrible. But this is what happened. I don't feel any way. I don't feel bad. I just feel like, okay, are we done with this story?
I feel you.
Yeah, he put himself on the mercy of the court at that point. So yeah. Yeah,
Marquita says, I think the sentencing is fair. I think so too, says Aaron. He paid his dues with the loss of his career. Maybe she's saying, no, she said it is fair. What do you think, your first thought just on sentencing? I just wanted to hear.
Lindsay was kind of getting to it. I felt like at this point, once you've done what you did, now it's out of your hands. Like you said, they could have really lit him up, and he could have done
I think
some
he
years.
was lit
but
up.
But Tori, what
Tori,
he did,
he was facing 15 years total.
I didn't think he'd see any jail time.
But
5 months
what
for him?
he did was a huge deal in terms of, even if he had a judge that wasn't even saying, you embarrassed the city of Chicago, what if they said, I have a son or a daughter, and they are LGBTQ, and what you did puts them in further danger.
Yeah.
What you did makes them less believable, almost like if somebody said that they were sexually assaulted and they were not. So
I hear
what he did, 5 months, I think, is very fair. It could have been a lot worse.
Well, let's keep on to another thing that happened in the courtroom that everyone's talking about. So finally, we got to hear from Jussie, who spoke up, took off his mask after learning his sentence. Take a look at what he said.
I am not suicidal. I am innocent, and I am not suicidal. If I did this, then it means that I stuck my fist in the fears of Black Americans in this country for over 400 years and the fears of the LGBTQ community. Your Honor, I respect you and I respect the jury, but I did not do this. And I am not suicidal. And if anything happens to me when I go in there, I did not do it to myself. And you must all know that.
All right, let's talk about this outburst will live down in infamy.
This is like Shakespearean levels of infamy.
He's really in this fantasy.
And also, does he understand, let's compare this to a similar situation that he's discussing, committing suicide allegedly in jail like Jeffrey Epstein. So many people all over the world who had much power and he knew secrets about, and the reason that some people think that Jeffrey Epstein, quote unquote, committed suicide in jail. Dude, you did something to yourself and nobody cares and nobody called for this and nobody, so why would you think that somebody's going to be after you? It just is like so random.
Because he's famous?
No, it's not how it works. Like, what storyline is that? He's like so committed to this innocence and acting role. It's ridiculous. I can't even believe that he did this, like, with the prayer hands, looking at the judge. It just was like so extra. I was like really beside myself.
Me
and it
too.
takes a lot.
All right, Al, the judge said this: I acknowledge there are wonderful sides to you that are very giving and charitable and loving, but you have another side that is profoundly arrogant, selfish, and narcissistic. I would include this in
I thought you were saying that to me.
No.
Al has two sides.
I'm like, just text me that. I'm right there.
I mean, this does seem like a narcissist who can't leave the movie.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, and you know, as Lindsay was reacting like a normal person would, I was like, yeah, what you're saying is right when you're talking about a person that's looking at life through normal parameters. This is a person that is suffering from delusions of grandeur, and I really do think that he does think that he's this kind of martyred MLK, you know, Harvey Milk kind of situation where he is just like, I'm going to put you guys on my back and carry the cross for you guys. And everybody's like, dude, we didn't ask you and we don't know what you're doing. And I really do. It does show that, like, right up until the end, he believes this, whether it's ludicrous or not. It seems like he believes this.
Yeah, that's what kind of bothers me.
Seems like he's auditioning for his next role.
I guess.
Yeah. He also said Jussie, the judge, wasn't motivated by money, but instead did this because he craved attention and thought he could boost his profile by tapping into the social justice movement, just like you said, Al, essentially making himself famous by throwing a, quote, this is what the judge said, national pity party. Fair?
I think this is a lesson to everybody to take the stairs. Like, take the long way to success. I know he wanted to be part of the moment and get all this notoriety from what it seems by playing on the fears and emotions of the people, but really he just played himself. Like, look at this. This is because you wanted to be part of a moment so bad and you inserted yourself in there. Instead of saying something like, on behalf of the LGBTQ community, instead of doing something to help the Black community, you decided to make up an entire scheme and wasted thousands and upon hundreds of thousands of dollars that you now have to pay back and embarrass both communities and yourself and just caused extra turmoil. And now you're the clown. You're the only clown.
Now, what if he had showed remorse? Let's go the opposite. He stands up and he says, I'm so sorry I did this. I own this. I respect you. Do you think, or he did this before, would the sentencing have been so harsh? To me, this is a response to the quadrupling down and disrespect. Am I right?
I agree with you. And Victoria, I'd like to ask you that. I mean, as a person that's kind of grown up in and around the law, do you think the judge is like thinking right up until the sentencing, I'm giving you one last shot to kind of make your apology?
Judges write their opinions really at the last moment. Sometimes it takes agonizing hours to think about it. He did not help himself, is what I will say in this. He really didn't help himself. And we will see and follow this story as I'm sure it will continue. Coming up on DBL, meet a woman who's running for Congress and very upfront about her stripper past. She tells us why she refuses to be ashamed. And a former reality TV star eats raw meat to help with fertility issues. Interesting, but does this really work? Don't worry, Dr. Coley's here and she's going to weigh in for us.
Closed captioning provided by
Say this. They are going to run a mental test on Jussie, just so you know, before he goes to jail. And this is pretty standard, but I am concerned that he can't get out of this lie. I don't know. I'm just letting you know there will be a mental test before he goes to jail.
So we're talking about hot topics with Dr. Coley this morning. Deion Sanders.
What was I going to say? I'm just so blown away by this whole situation. I think the fact that he just committed so hard.
Yeah,
and I think if he would have said, I'm having some emotional distress off of the last year and the experiences that people in my community, that's plural, have had, the judge might have been like, you know what, I understand. You all going crazy in the house because of the pandemic. He could have played on so many things that got him out. His lawyer, as you can see.
Question number 2. Super weird news.
Oh, Taylor. Good to know. We got an alert. Thank you, Kelly. He'll be held in protective custody. I do think he's a little bit more vulnerable because he's famous and the story. I don't think no one cares. I also think if you're, people of color or someone who is of the LGBTQ community has a lot who's angry at Jussie Smollett. So I don't know. I think that he's more to be fearful
I think it's going to go down as one of the strangest cases.
Oh, it'll
in terms
go down
of
in history,
entertainment
right?
because
Okay.
I just don't get the payoff. I don't.
I think he's in believing it. I think he might be mentally.
Bruce Wayne syndrome.
But
It's
it
about
seems
people that want
like-
to be a superhero.
But I mean, he was on a show currently. That's the thing.
The one thing we didn't talk about is I think he's mentally ill on
That's
some level.
yes, and
Seriously,
so
he's delusional.
He really believes this.
Maybe, but
I mean,
there's a
he
mental illness
never-
happening.
Yeah, and he will be tested before he goes to jail.
But then I was thinking about that. Isn't everybody that goes to jail?
Yes.
Wouldn't you say half of those people? I mean, we have numbers. A lot of people
It
in our
doesn't mean he's so
correctional.
mentally ill that he should get off. You know what I mean?
I would argue there are probably people that are more mentally ill than him that
It's a
are in
pretty high
jail.
standard to get out of a crime based on
But if I was
insanity or mental illness.
Right.
But if I was the defense, develop until about 6 months.
That's what I'm wondering, Tori, before he stood trial.
Welcome back to DBL. So there are a couple of medical hot topics.
And I'm ready to tackle them.
You're
do it.
not
Two doctors on the at the table.
Oh,
He's not the doctor. So we have Dr. Coley. She is here to weigh in. Hi, Dr. Coley.
Hi.
Good to see you. All right, so we got to get to this first story. Deion Sanders, he was one of the fastest NFL players ever. He recently had to have 2 of his toes amputated due to blood clots. Talk to me about what this is, how common this is, and how does it happen?
You know, not all that common, but he actually had a complication of surgery. So he had surgery on his toes, and then as part of the complication, he developed a condition called compartment syndrome. And if you think about our muscles, our arteries, and our veins, they're all in a closed compartment, right? So if you start having higher pressure, you can compress the arteries, and the toes don't get blood flow. So they become purple, then they become black, then they can start to fall off. So you actually have to cut the toe to save the body. And thankfully, he only lost the toe. Sometimes I've seen people lose the foot or the entire leg as well, as this condition is very serious.
And just a quick follow-up to that, you know, obviously he was a professional football player. He suffered from turf toe, which is and when he had his reality show, even in his mansion, I don't know if you ever saw it, he rode around in one of those carts that you...
So he had
so
feet problems.
And his feet were like compacted together, so I wonder if that was his cleats that were smashing his toes together?
Well, I think the cleats, or in ladies, the high heels and stuff, can create problems with your toes because it puts abnormal stress on the joints. So that set him up for that surgery. But this, I really think, was a complication of surgery. They also said he had a family history of having blood clots more frequently, so he may have had a predisposition to clot his artery off. But it's a life-threatening emergency. So if you ever have a toe that's pale, it's pulseless, it hurts or tingles, and it's starting to get cold, you need to call 911.
Wow.
All right. Well, speaking of 911, this story's super weird. You know, the star from The Hills, Heidi Montag, was seen snacking on a raw, I need to make sure I'm saying this, a raw bison heart to help her get pregnant. Now, earlier this week, she posted this video of her eating a raw liver. How dangerous is this? Because she has followers, and I'm sure she has followers that are trying to get pregnant. Does this help with fertility? Please talk to the people.
So I'll start by saying that I'm a vegetarian, so that's full disclosure. So I'm a big believer in the plant-based diet. Now, you know, in World War II and some other times in history, we actually did eat a lot of organ meats because they're full of nutrients. Pound for pound, they have more nutrients than the muscle actually has. But here are a few cautions. So number one, eating uncooked animal meat is really, really dangerous. And the CDC says it can really increase your risk of foodborne illness, salmonella, E. coli, just getting really, really sick, even getting hospitalized from it. Number two, you want to be careful because it's loaded with cholesterol. It can cause gout. It can cause actually a lot of problems. So small amounts of organ meats, which we now see at a lot of fine dining restaurants.
Awful. They're called offal meats. Yeah.
Yes.
OFFAL.
Yes, exactly. So they can be full of vitamins and nutrients that could be beneficial. Now with fertility, folic acid, as you know, you had to take when you're pregnant. Yeah, because the baby's growing and stuff is an important nutrient that's enriched in organ meats. But I do not support this behavior whatsoever.
Oh, God.
I think it is very risky, and I think doing it could really end you up in trouble.
Prenatal vitamins are also cool, so you know.
Yeah,
exactly. That's another option. So I want to switch gears one more time. So there's new research about how fat is stored, and so is there any chance that this could help with obesity in women?
Very interesting. I really like the study because what it tells us is that fat is not fat for everybody. Men and women store fat differently. Men are apple-shaped, women tend to be more pear-shaped. And the risk of fat, depending on where it goes, is different. So if we put fat on our tummies, it actually confers a much higher risk than fat elsewhere in our bodies, like our arms and legs. So this research actually tells us women and men are different with respect to fat. So if we're trying to get women to lose weight, we may have to design specific tailored treatments for women.
Huh. It's like apple, pear, butternut squash.
I can't get the apple thing out of my head. I'm like,
it's an inverted triangle is one, and then a board is another. So, and actually, there's a lot of evidence that your body shape may predict your risk of heart disease in the future.
Which one's most risky?
The apple is the most risky because you have the most belly. Your waist circumference, exactly.
That's a nice way of saying it.
The most belly.
I love it. All right. Thank you so much, Doctor. Thanks. We really appreciate that. Now, if you have a question y'all want answered by Dr. Coley, just write us on social media. You can also email at info@dailyblastlive.com. Thanks again. We'll be right back.
There is a ton of misinformation out there. The Russian government is engaging in its typical propaganda campaign, trying to poison the minds of people in their own country and then also mislead the Ukrainians. They're saying Ukraine is run by drug users. Again, not true. And Putin has used the justification that Russia needs to denazify Ukraine as a way to justify this campaign.
Бажаю здоров'я, українські герої.
I want to ask about any possible disinformation on the Ukrainian side.
I mean, the Ukrainians are putting out a lot of material on social media, videos, pictures, interviews with captured Russian soldiers. It's hard to know how accurate all of that is. Obviously, they want to present their efforts in a very positive light. There are independent groups there, like the International Red Cross is there. And so there has been some verification of a lot of the Ukrainian information.
How can people look out for this type of misinformation?
I mean, people have to be skeptical about everything online just because there's so much false information. But the way people can protect themselves is pay attention to authoritative sources. It is hard to evaluate information during wartime because we are thousands of miles away. We're relying on a handful of people who are actually on the scene in Ukraine. Social media has added a new element in the sense of it's given us access to ordinary people and their personal experiences and their personal testimony.
And the best way to avoid spreading misinformation or disinformation about the war or anything else is to just take a beat before sharing and make sure that you know the source. With your Verify, I'm Evan Kozlov.
Welcome back to DBL. Alexandria Hunt is not your ordinary candidate running for Congress. On one hand, she's a public health researcher who is advocating for social, racial, economic, and environmental justice. But on the other hand, she's a former stripper. And she says that makes her uniquely qualified. Check out this interview we did earlier with Alexandria Hunt. Alexandra, can you talk to us about your decision to come out publicly with your past that so many in Congress we've seen and otherwise in politics have tried to hide? You've been very open about it.
I didn't want it to be dragged out of the closet and used against me and potentially derail our campaign as we built it. And the other reason was I was in community with sex workers, and when I told them that I was preparing to run for office, they said, please don't leave us behind. And I think to fall silent on a community is to be harmful. So I decided to lead with it. Wow. And here we are.
So Alexandria, to put it frankly, what has the reaction been? And what has been the worst criticism that you've received personally?
Well, the reaction's been really mixed. There have been some people who really commend me for being brave and for stepping forward with such vulnerability and honesty. And then there has been an onslaught of disgusting commentary, honestly, through all different facets into the campaign. And I think the worst is really subjective. And so I would say that the worst thing I've heard is when I'm told that I can't be a good role model for young girls because of this piece of my past.
Obviously, you knew there were going to be critics. So how do you respond to people who specifically feel that you shouldn't be in a position of power and influence because of your past?
I think that people have their own biases, and it's something that we need to push forward with, and that's been something I've been trying to do on this campaign trail. All I've done is work to pay my bills, and the decisions that I make of what sort of field I want to go into is not really anyone's business or place to judge. And on the campaign trail, we've been running a fully grassroots campaign. We're not taking any corporate money. So I think that there's really a double standard here of where people get their money from and how I'm criticized for making an honest living. But whereas someone like my opponent isn't criticized for taking corporate money and then catering to his corporate donors in Congress.
Can you talk to us about where you come from, what made you decide to become a stripper, and more importantly, to run for office?
Well, I come from, both my parents were teachers. One of them still is, one of them is retired. And so I come from a family that's very much centered around education and young people growing into opportunity through education. And that was something that I always saw as part of my future, was attending college. And the way that our education system is set up in this country, it's very expensive to pursue that. And so I had to take out loans and also had to figure out how to pay for housing and for food and for books on the side. And so in doing that, I started to look into ways that I could make good money while also being a full-time college student, and that was through stripping. So I decided to work at a strip club while I was in school.
And legal, may I remind everyone.
I just want to say this. What does it say about your society where two teachers can't afford to send their kid to college? Interesting.
Well said, Al. Now, if any voters in Philadelphia are watching, first of all, hi, thank you for watching, but we really want to give this chance to give Alexandra the floor. So what is it you want to say to those voters, your constituents or future constituents? Go ahead.
I want them to know that we are deserving of representatives who show up for us and really fight for our needs. That's not what we currently have. We're not getting enough resources out of the government. If you are living in the shadows, this is your call-in, and that we're fighting to pull you into the light. And I hope that you will join our campaign and either give a contribution or volunteer or vote for me on May 17th, and that we can build the future we want to see together.
Wow. Well said. I got to be honest, the DBL Nation's like, if I could vote for her, I would. So guys, if you want more information and to give a donation.
And also what people can do if they're not in their district.
Exactly. What you can do, go ahead to huntforcongress.com, which is a really cool website in itself. You know what I mean? I just wanted to say that on the side. Thank you so much for being honest. I know you might not know this, but it's a bit of a pioneering thing that you're doing. It's breaking a wall down. And whether you believe it or not, it's a brave thing you're doing. So thank you for being on the show. And we really do appreciate you. Thank you so much. We'll be right back.
Promotional consideration is brought to you by
My girl Candy spilling even more tea about upcoming ATL housewife drama. Keisha Cole explains why Eve unfriended her, and Cardi B could collabo with Dolly P in this week's What Erica's Watching. First, Candy gave us exclusive tea about her fallout with Marlo. Yes, honey, yes. By telling DBL that the new housewife and She by Sheree will be what everyone's talking about this upcoming season. Now, Candy is detailing the explosive fight by saying it was out of control and full of terrible verbal jabs that hit below the belt.
At the beginning, when we lost 2 peaches, I was a little nervous.
Yeah.
But I am so happy with how it all came together. When I tell y'all, it was just craziness from beginning to end.
Although they are friends again, it's not all peachy keen for me because the ladies made up before giving us a messy reunion. Now next, Keisha Cole is speaking out on what led to her demise of her friendship with Eve. She said she slapped a girl for trying to take Eve's bag, but Eve wasn't having it. Take a look.
Eve is really about that. Like, we stopped hanging out. Like, she was like, I can't hang with Keisha. Like, she can't be slapping people. I was like, wait, I'll slap somebody for you.
Well, Keisha learned not to put her hands on people, and what I learned is Keisha is the kind of ride or die homegirl that most of us would want. Finally, a track with Dolly Parton and rap star Cardi B is more likely than you might think. The country legend recently said that she can see herself working with Cardi B in the future. Dolly calls Cardi an original, and I call this a hit in the making. Share with me anything that catches your eye by using the hashtag DBLEricaWatch. We'll be right back.
Verify viewer Joe texted to ask whether Russia is violating the 1994 agreement that led to Ukraine giving up its nuclear arsenal. So let's verify. Did Ukraine agree to give up its nuclear weapons in 1994 in exchange for safety from a U.S. or Russian invasion? Our sources are the text of the Budapest Memorandum, the Arms Control Association, the U.S. State Department, and the Wilson Center, a nonpartisan policy forum on global issues. When the Soviet Union collapsed, Ukraine inherited the third largest nuclear arsenal in the world, and according to the Wilson Center, the newly formed government used the stockpile as leverage to get security guarantees from Russia that it would not attack them in exchange for denuclearizing. The U.S. and the U.K. gave assurances to Ukraine that they would provide aid if an attack ever happened, but, and this is key, it did not guarantee military support. And at the same time, all four countries agreed to consult each other if the treaty's commitments ever came into question. So it's true, Ukraine did agree to give up its nuclear weapons in 1994 in exchange for safety from a U.S. or Russian invasion. And that's why international leaders say Russia violated the agreement by invading Ukraine last month.
Welcome back to DBL. We do have some sad news. For anyone who knows this familiar face from Sesame Street, actor Emilio Delgado passed away yesterday after battling blood cancer. He was 81 years old. Amelia played Sesame Street's Fix-It shop owner, Luis Rodriguez, for 45 years and proudly laid claim to the record for the longest-running role for a Mexican-American in a TV series. I cannot tell you how much Sesame Street shaped my life. I think it's a marvelous, wonderful, miraculous program. I really do.
And I watch old episodes and I'm like, I can't wait till Kinsley understands this, because it was so influential and we didn't even know at the time. I was so little that you just watch it and you're digesting all this great information.
Great information.
And life lessons, really.
Really. Remember when one of the other humans on the show died, they taught Big Bird about death.
Right.
And
they talked about HIV.
Yes.
They talked about the opioid crisis. They talked about some people are in wheelchairs. I remember learning all of these things, and they just made everything that was different to you as a child that you didn't understand so normal and so regular, and it was just such a big deal.
Wow. May this man rest in peace. You've taught and helped so many children and families. DBL's new every day. We'll see you Monday, same time, same place. Bye, guys.
You say, me llamo. That means my name is. Introduce yourself, tell them your name. In Spanish or English, it's still the same.